Are you trying to get rid of mice and use rodenticide or poison? We're going to jump in and talk about the proper bait station selection. At Pest Protection Plus, we've been getting rid of rats and mice from homes for over 12 years. And the most common mistake that we see is people using the wrong bait stations in the wrong situations, which can lead to danger for wildlife, pets, and even children. So we're going to keep it very simple. We're going to break it down when to use this bait station inside and what you need to do if you're trying to bait on the outside. So a few things to talk about right off the hop is bait stations are intended to keep the rodenticide. So any kind of poison, this is a soft bait. They do have block baits, lots of different kinds, but safe and only accessible to rats and mice and inaccessible to pets, wildlife, children, or any unintended subject. So the most key thing that all bait stations need is to be locked. So you can see here, it's locked down, you can't get into it, and there's access poles on the side that only a mouse can fit in. Lots of different bait stations out there, lots of different keys. You just need to make sure that it's secure. When you open up the bait station, this is where the bait goes. The next thing you want to do is make sure your bait is secure, and this is a step we see a lot of people miss. You want to make sure that you have a skewer to go through the bait, and in the blocks there'll be a hole that you can stick them through. Secure it into the feeding chamber, and you can now see when it's in here, the mice cannot pull it out. If you don't do that, they can pull it out, and then it can be unintentionally accessible to the untargeted species we were talking about. And another reason bait stations work really well, in addition to safety, is the mice come in this little slot, and they have a nice, dark, confined space where they feel safe, and it actually encourages them to eat. So once it's in here, you want to make sure that the station snaps closed and is locked down. Always make sure you test it. Sometimes the locks, depending on the bait station you use, need to really be squeezed and locked. Otherwise, it can pop open, and again, the bait will be accessible. The other thing you need to ensure that you do is have it properly labeled. It needs to have the warning, the actual poison that you're using with the PCP number and the active ingredient. The reason for that is if some sort of untargeted species got the bait and you need to go to the vet, they will know exactly what to do depending on the active ingredient there. So always make sure it's labeled, and you want to make sure it's locked down. So these bait stations can be used indoors because they're not weighted, and you can get them into areas like under a sink, behind a stove, in inaccessible areas. Now if you want to go outside and you're going to be trying to control a rat or mouse population on the exterior of a home, you need to use a more robust bait station that can be secured or is weighted down. The reason for that is you don't want anything to be able to move or run off with the station. We see people all the time put these outside and they disappear. And that can be a raccoon, a skunk, or anything running off with it because they smell the bait, and you cannot do that. So this is a bait station that we like to use on the outside. Same thing, it has a different key, but it locks down. And what you can see in here is it has a cement block in the bottom. Depending where you're located, there will be rules on how heavy it needs to be, but this again prevents any sort of wildlife or animal from running off with it, and it also keeps it secure and in place. You also need to make sure that you have it against a structure like the exterior of a home. If you get a bait station that's approved for the outdoors, but it does not have a block, you'll see on the back side that it will have an area where you can secure it. If you're going to secure it, you need to anchor it into something or use something strong like airplane cable around either into cement or around a pole so that it cannot be moved. You have to make sure that these are weighted or secured. That is the number one thing we see people doing wrong. And then on the outside, once you have the bait station, you need to ensure that you put the pegs in. Just like the bait on the inside, it needs to be skewered so that rats and mice cannot pull the bait and remove it from the station. Blocks will have the holes, and if you're using a soft bait like this, you want to skewer it right through and make sure that it's secure. Again, once that is in there, you can see that it's all secure. Ensure that when you close it, you hear that click and ensure that it's locked. Of course, you need to have the label on the top, and depending on the bait that you use, you need to adequately mark it. and that is what you do for an exterior station. So on the outside, you can use an exterior station, secured bait, secured or weighted bait station, properly labeled, properly locked. Interior, you can use the bait station. It doesn't need to be weighted or secured, but it does need to be locked, and it does need to be placed in an area that is ideally inaccessible to children, pets, or untargeted animals. And then another quick tip is that these entry point holes, you always want to have them up against a perimeter. This not only is more effective, and you have to do that on the outside, but it makes them a lot more likely to go in. Rodents love to travel around the perimeter, so they're more likely to come into contact and feel comfortable feeding. If you like this, we do a ton of do-it-yourself rodent videos. Check out the playlist. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. If you liked the video today, please subscribe. Until next time.